You're standing on the bank of a river that vanished 100,000 years ago, in one day become the driest, emptiest stretch of the Sahara Desert. Right now it's not empty. Water moves past your feet. Herds graze on the far bank. Somewhere north, two more rivers are cutting the same path toward a coastline you've never seen. You have no bottle, no canteen, no idea that in 100,000 years, none of this will still be here. The heat hasn't arrived yet. Neither has the silence. Both are coming. Right now, water follows you everywhere. No searching, no sip well dug into damp sand, no 20-kilometer walk between one water source and the next. Time to the season, time to memory. Just a bottle in your bag, a tap 3 steps from your bed, an app that nags you to drink more of it. For most of human history, none of that existed. People crossed the harshest, driest terrain on the planet, with nothing but a container, a memory, and a plan. So how did ancient humans actually survive crossing deserts? Not for a day, but for generations, across landscapes with almost no water at all. In 2013, geographer Tom Coulthard at the University of Hull ran a climate simulation that answered part of the mystery before anyone ever packed a bag. Using rainfall and terrain data, his team reconstructed 3 river systems that once cut straight through the Sahara around 100,000 years ago. One of them, the Irharhar River, flowed for roughly 3 months a year, just long enough every year to link wetter mountains in the south to the Mediterranean coast in the north. The first humans to leave Africa may not have crossed a desert at all. They followed a green corridor that only looks like a desert to everyone who came after. Everyone assumes the story of leaving Africa is a story of endurance against sand and heat. The truth is, it's a story about timing, about people reading a landscape that would only stay open for a few thousand years before it shut behind them. So what changed once that corridor closed? Around 105,000 years ago, at a rock shelter called Ga Mohana Hill in what's now South Africa's Kalahari, archaeologist Jane Wilkins and her team uncovered fragments of ostrich eggshell buried alongside 22 white calcite crystals. The site sits over 650 kilometers from the nearest coastline, deep inland, deep in dry country. Those shells weren't leftover food. A single ostrich egg holds close to a liter, roughly a modern water bottle's worth, and it can be sealed, buried, and dug up again months later. People weren't only carrying water, they were caching it, leaving supply drops for a future version of themselves, or for a stranger who'd need it more. That caching instinct didn't stop at burying full eggs either. Across the Kalahari, sand communities still dig what's known as a sip well, a hole punched down to damp sand, packed with dried grass, and sealed around a hollow reed. Suck hard enough, and moisture condensing on that grass rises up the straw, drop by drop, out of sand that looks bone dry on the surface. It isn't a backup plan. It's a second water source hidden in plain sight, in ground everyone else would have walked straight past without a second look. Everyone pictures desert crossing the way a marathon works, start to finish, on whatever's in your pack. The truth is, early humans were planning relay routes across dry country tens of thousands of years before anyone put the concept into words. Reading the ground itself as a kind of map, one that had to be learned firsthand and could never just be handed over. Carrying water only gets you so far. The body still has to survive the walk. In 2006, anthropologist Louis Liebenberg published a study in Current Anthropology documenting hunts he'd recorded with sand trackers in Botswana's Kalahari, including one in which a hunter named Karoha Langwane ran down a kudu across roughly 35 kilometers of open desert in 3 hours and 35 minutes, until the animal collapsed from heat stroke. Humans carry somewhere between 2 and 4 million sweat glands, more than almost any other mammal our size, spread across skin with barely any fur to trap the heat in. It isn't that ancient humans could outrun a kudu, it's that they could outcool one, mile after punishing mile. Here's where it gets strange though. That same cooling system is also, brutally, a liability. Hydration researcher Stavros Kavouras has noted that most medical textbooks put the human limit at around 11 to 12% of body weight lost to water. Cross that line, and the body is considered incapable of surviving. A 2025 review published in the Journal of Internal Medicine, led by researcher Johnson, laid out exactly how much more a true desert specialist can absorb. A camel can lose 40% of its body weight in water and live, its blood chemistry holding plasma volume steady even as the rest of it dries out. Camels weren't domesticated until around 3,000 years ago. For tens of thousands of years before that, every desert crossing on Earth was made by a body with roughly a quarter of a camel's margin for error. So the honest answer to how ancient humans crossed deserts without water isn't really about water. It's about information. A river that only ran 3 months a year. A shell buried where a future stranger might dig it up. A patch of damp sand that gives up water only if you already know it's there. A route memorized and repeated, mouth to mouth, for longer than any single life could hold it. The desert never got safer to cross. People just got better at remembering exactly where it wasn't. You're still standing on that riverbank if you let yourself picture it. The water long gone, the grass gone, nothing left but the shape of where it used to run, buried under 100,000 years of sand. Somewhere close by, a shell is probably still in the ground, exactly where someone left it, waiting for a person who never came back for it. Ancient humans didn't survive the desert by outlasting it with their bodies. They survived it by refusing to face it alone. One cache, one remembered river, one shared route at a time. The map was never on paper. It was passed hand to hand, and it was the one supply that never ran out. You're standing on a riverbank that vanished 100,000 years ago, in what's now the driest stretch of the Sahara, and right now, it's full of water. This is the story of how people crossed the most brutal landscapes on Earth with no bottle, no tap, and no idea their route would one day disappear. For most of human history, water didn't come from a fridge. It came from planning, memory, and knowing exactly where to dig.